Alright, let's get this started. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Luke, aka KRS, Taylor. Uh, in this video, we have another healing Esper set up. Very excited about it. Recently did a lot of testing in BTR on the healing Esper, and you know, just kind of found out some things, and then I falsified some of my information. So that is my reasoning for making in this video, is to kind of set things straight. I think everyone deserves the right to have, you know, some of my knowledge and experience, as I have been healing. Some background with me, I have been healing with the Esper since closed beta. I've actually healed with every class in this game, and I've always enjoyed healing, even in WoW days, War, you know, so on and so forth. But anyway, welcome. I hope we'll learn something together. I'm somewhat tired, as I have stayed up most of the night thinking about doing this video. So I will do my best. I have lots of notes, and hopefully I'll follow it and not have so many damn tangents. Alright, first and foremost, talk about my gear and all the purples, blah blah blah. Stat priorities. So the stat priorities for a healing Esper is this, and you can keep this in mind as we will go to runes and rune sets. So when you're going to rune stuff and whatnot, keep all of these stat priorities in mind. As you can see, I am not at 1680 insight. I will get there when I have my food buff and my boost for raiding. So don't even worry yourself about that. For those who do not know, there is a milestone at the very end of the insight tree at 1680, and that's where you want to be at. So buffed, the stat priority for insight is 1542. That's with the Adventus boost, insight boost, and you know, whatever food that you use to get insight with. Let's see. So first and foremost, you want your insight to 1542. Then after that, support power, since it is a secondary stat, will always scale better than straight insight will. And this is the same case with, from my understanding, all classes. All the healing classes, all the damage classes, always want that primary stat to be at 1542, and to which point, once they are at 1542, the support power, or assault power, if you're DPS, will always scale better. Okay? After that, you kind of want to be around, as an Esper, focus recovery. You can see mine is at 3.88, and I think prior to, I made some gear adjustments and rune adjustments, had I think 3.97. Basically, long story short, I never had any problems with focus, and a lot of that had to do with the build I am running. But anyway, so you want to be around 3.8, I'd say, would be safe. Just under 4 would be great if you can afford to spare that stat. Anything more than that is, in my opinion, a waste. After you feel comfortable with focus recovery and where you're at in your healing, you're not running out of focus, you have plenty of focus to do what you need to do as the role of healer, crit becomes significantly stronger. One thing to note, I do not know where the diminishing returns are at for critical, nor do I know where the diminishing returns are for crit severity, which is our last stat, by the way. It is simply, when you do crit, you have stronger crits. In other words, if I healed and I critted on that heal for, say, 10,000 for an easy number, with crit severity, that determines how much more healing I will do as a result of critting. So that's what crit severity is, if anyone was wondering. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. So diminishing returns, what is that? What does that mean? Some great people have done some math, and to spare you all of the boredom, and some of you might like that stuff. I do. For spell power, diminishing returns is the point where you reach so much spell power that stacking more spell power does not greatly influence your healing better. So if you think of a graph of every bit of spell power that you gain, essentially linearly increases the amount of healing you do, your throughput. There reaches a point, and some people have done some math, and I may be a little bit off on this, but when you reach about 4,000 spell power, which I'm nowhere near, by the way, you need to put a lot more priority in the other stats at that point. So crit hit becomes significantly stronger and scales better than stacking support power after 4,000 support power. And crit has a diminishing return, although I don't know what it is. My best guess would probably be around 35% or so, maybe a little less. And then at that point, you will want more crit hit severity, because that scales better. But that's, somewhat unknown at this point, and no one really knows, to my knowledge, what the diminishing return on crit hit is. Same thing with crit hit severity. My best guess would probably be 185%, maybe 190. Who knows? But that basically covers what I wanted to talk about as far as stats are concerned. Obviously, they have done some changes to the way crit scales. As you can see by the tooltip, every 1 point of grit you get is 18 base health. They also changed the way the milestones work as well. They increased the amount of grit, and a lot of this, I think, in my opinion, had to do with them changing Datascape from 40-man to 20-man versions, and some of the growing pains that people had to do between the raid of GA to Datascape. But anyway, that basically covers everything that I was thinking. Where I was going with grid is that, obviously a dead healer cannot heal. So having some grit, not stacking it in runes so much, as we'll talk about in a minute, is worthwhile. So you can survive, mechanics and whatnot easier. So yeah, alright, rune sets. I'm going to cover those pretty thoroughly. So I'm taking a lot of time to explain these things, because I'm going with the assumption that some people who may be watching this video, either later on YouTube or on live on Twitch, do not understand the intricacies of Esper healing. So it's important to me that if I explain the basics, say for example you were playing basketball, how to shoot the ball, then you might do a little better. So that's my thought process, and I hope you guys that are more experienced and maybe know more about Esper healing can bear with me. Anyway, rune sets. In my opinion, greatest to least, the best rune sets to worst would be Focus Region. Next would be Team Player. And then after that, I have Life Giver there. But my reasoning for putting Life Giver last was because, it's not a bad rune set at all. Okay? At all. It's a great rune set. Is one of those things that it costs so much money and you need so many slots for it to be useful. And in my opinion, until you get to the 20, until you get 20 runes of Life Giver, it's not really worthwhile. For those who don't know, Life Giver is essentially a Elder rune set of Focus Region. Okay, so it gives you more max focus, and it restores more focus when you land a crit hit. Okay, and one thing to note about this is that if you have a regular rune set that is similar to an Elder rune set, in this example, Focus Region being the regular rune set, or general is the word, that you can't have both. In other words, they don't stack. You either have one or the other. And so it's not worthwhile to have both, is what I'm getting at. Focus Region will by far be the best for new healers. And, I don't see that changing anytime soon. Team Player is also pretty good. Because it gives a secondary set, support power, statically. As well as it allows you to up a little bit of throughput healing that you can do. So it's not too bad. I have 12 of 12 Focus Region, as you can see, and 12 of 12 Team Player. And like I said, Life Giver is awesome. It's essentially puts a hot on the ground that people can stand in, and it's extra AoE healing. It's nothing crazy or awesome, but it's additive to what you can do as a healer, Esper healer. So it's pretty cool. I had the opportunity in PTR to really test it out, and it's pretty nice, I have to say. So anyway, that covers the rune sets. Now, as far as runing goes, you remember I talked about in our stat priority that once you reach a certain threshold of insight, that being 1542, spell power is significantly better. So what I'm going to talk about is what you should be using in your rune slots, based off of what that rune slot is. So if you're looking to stack support power, okay, these are the runes types that you want, that you can change around, that you can move around to make it, get more out of your runes, so to speak. Those are fusion slots, water slots, and earth slots can be changed to support power. Insight, pretty much all of the rune types can be rune to insight, except for air. Logic, and I put fusion there only because you can take fusion. See, fusion can be support power. It can be anything you want it to be. The only downside with fusion slots is that until you get to the elder rune sets, you really can't use them for much anything else than, as a support. Excuse me, as a healing Esper. The only things you really want in those slots are either insight, if you are below the cap, or support power, if you are over the cap. One thing to note about these runes too is, say for example you have 4 slots on a piece of gear, and I'm just trying to find an example here. I don't recall if I have them here. Yeah, here we go. So I had, on this particular piece of gear, my boots, I have 5 slots open, and so what I decided to do was I did 1 fusion slot with insight and 1 fusion slot with support power. Okay, and so what I was getting at with that is you cannot have the same type of rune in that particular piece of gear twice. Okay, you have to switch it up. It won't take it. So keep that in mind. Save some money, and little tip. Anyway, the next thing, like say for example you were under the amount of focus region that I mentioned earlier, and you wanted to put some focus region in. Well, you have a couple options there. You can use focus region in air slots, fire slots, and life slots. And say you wanted to get more crit. You didn't want to have to re-roll those rune slots, pay all that money to buy those runic fluxes. A ton of money, by the way. But you still wanted to get something out of those rune slots. And you're good on everything else I just mentioned: spell power, insight, and focus region. Well, crit would be the next, since it's the best stat priority next for a healing Esper. And so that would be the type of slots you're looking for there, that you can move some things around, is logic will always be crit. There's no other thing that you would want to put in those slots. They're quite terrible for us. Air is also crit, assuming you don't need focus region, of course. Life is also an option. It's not very a good option, since you can get, I believe it's insight from it, and fire is the only other one I could find for crit. So again, that's, I'm covering a lot here, and I just want to make sure that I cover it clearly and accurately as best I can. So that covers the rune sets and the rune slots that you would probably be looking at in your gear. Alright, so the next thing to cover would be builds. So I got my basic standard build that I really like for this drop. Alright, so I'll just go down all the support skills real quick and talk about them, and my pluses and minuses, my pros and cons, my likes and dislikes, and my reasoning for picking what I do have. So anyway, mind over body, okay? Good single target heal, pretty decent. The problem I have with this ability, my main issue, and why I never have it on my bar anymore, is for the amount of focus it costs you and the amount of healing it does, you would be always better running Soothe, period. There's no discussion or argument you can give me, even if you're responsible for the tank. healing only. Soothe still heals more than Mind Over Body ever will. At least at this point. I would certainly like, if Carbine's watching, for them to take another look at this and maybe make it worthwhile for me to put it in my limited action set, because right now it's not worthwhile. Next ability, and the one I do have on my bar, is Bolster. Bolster is a hot heal. You start with 2 charges that you can use, so you can pop it on one target, click on the next one, pop it on him, and have 2 hots running. It doesn't heal for an astronomical amount, even at my support power, but it does heal something. It's more or less used for psi point generation. As a Esper, as a healing Esper, you typically don't have a whole lot of problems building psi points, but it is there, as I'll talk about later, for sort of a tips or tricks of the trade, if you will, that I use when I heal, especially when it comes to burst heal needed, as you'll see later. But it's a heal, it's a targeted ability, and yeah. I tier 4 it because after 12 seconds I get 2 charges back. Really awesome skill. You used to have to tier 8 this back in drop 3 to get it, and it honestly was not worth taking all those ability points in that one ability to do so. So it's a good ability. It's cut and dry. Next ability on my bar I have is Soothe. It is your primary builder, primary healing ability that you use. It's a line telegraph. It's not targeted. You have to aim this ability. But a while back I was talking about how Mind Over Body will never heal as much as Soothe does. Essentially it heals you and 4 most injured allies. So it's a smart heal. It generates 1 psi point. It's a charge up kind of ability. Depending on whether or not you have it available or what you do in your combat, whether you have hold to cast or press and hold, or whatever. It starts the charge, it goes up, and once basically what it does is you get to charge 2, you get 1 psi point. You get to charge 3, you get 2 psi points. Awesome ability. It also heals more than, as you can tell, Mind Over Body. At my current support power, I'm healing 2,992 health on 1 ally, whereas with Soothe, I'm healing 5 people for almost double that amount. Well, it's a little less than double, but yeah. I tier 4 it for the reduced charge time, because without the tier 4, it does take a little bit longer to charge than Mind Over Body would. But with the tier 4, it is the same amount of cast time. So you can see why I don't like Mind Over Body now. Alright, Mending Banner. Why I will never have this ability on my bar is quite simply, it is a targeted ability. Not only that, it heals 1 target. It is a finisher. So it takes out all of your... sorry, I gotta keep getting out of AFK. But it's a target ability. It not only is a finisher, but it takes, it being a finisher, it takes your psi points away, which would be better used on Reverie in this case. The only other finisher that we do have as an Esper is a mental boon. It does not scale well enough for me to put it on my bar. It is a heal over time finisher. So I would never put this on my bar. I would also never put Mending Banner on my bar. Another little pet peeve I have about this ability is if, say for example, the target you are trying to hit with this ability is behind you, you're not facing it, and you click on it, it will not go off. You have to be facing your target for it to heal. So another complaint I have with that ability. Mirage I don't have on my bar right now. I was super excited about this ability. It's gone through quite the overhaul of change. Is due to the fact that it's a ground targeted ability first and foremost. They nerfed the amount that it heals for, which is okay. That's fine. They reduced the cast time on it from drop 3, and it still gives you a side point when that person runs over the ability. The downside to this ability is that it is very hard to see in certain circumstances and situations, and it's a ground target ability. So, it's one of those things where it takes coordination with whoever you're healing, the tank or what have you, for them to run over that ability for you to see its usefulness. But the tier 4 is what I'll have in another build. Is essentially it restores a class specific resource, and you guys can look at the description and basically explains. But for example, if I threw it out and an engineer ran over it and got healed by it, they would receive 25 volatility. Same thing with an Esper. If they ran over it, they get 2 side points. So pretty nice ability. I'm still debating whether or not I will continue to run it, but it is a build that I will talk about a little bit later. Yeah, so I basically described all the healing abilities I don't have in this build. The next ability that I do want to talk about is Reverie. A while ago I was talking about finishers and the reasons I don't take those other finishers. This ability is super awesome. Incredibly meat and potatoes of the healing Esper. Any Esper worth his salt will always run this ability on their bar. There's, really no other option for us. Anyway, as you can see, it's a huge telegraph that, depending on how many side points you have, determines how much focus it takes, but also how much it heals for. So, something to keep in mind is that, of course, you always want to kind of have 5 side points ready and available in the event of damage coming out. It essentially heals 10 people, including yourself. So it's pretty freaking awesome. Its range is somewhere, it's about 25 meters, so it's freaking huge. But keep in mind your positioning and make sure that you're in range, so, in the event that you do need to heal someone, really desperately needs to heal, they're in that telegraph. Awesome ability. I can't talk enough about it. The tier 4 I took because it restores additional % health based off the side points you have when you use the ability. And it also only does that if the allies are below 35% health. So it's a pretty nifty little tier 4. Nothing's changed between drop 3 and drop 4 with this ability as far as the tiers are concerned. They're the same. The only reason I do want to move on here in a second, but the only reason I do take the tier 4 as opposed to the tier 8 is the buff beacon that tier 8 gives you, Reverie. I don't see it as worthwhile because it's only for 5 seconds. Yeah, it's on 10 people. So you would see somewhat of an increase to your overall heal per second throughput. But for 5 seconds, honestly, for the points that you have to spend to get there, it's not worthwhile. Especially now that they've reworked a lot of the tier 4s. To make it a little more interesting for a healer, so that it used to be a drop 3, you'd have bolster at tier 8, or excuse me, Soothe at tier 8, Reverie at tier 8, and then whatever left over would go wherever, you know? It's a lot less, it's a lot more interesting now, with drop 4. So anyway, that's Reverie. Tier 4, Pyrokinetic Flame. Awesome ability. It's received a recent buff with drop 4. Basically, it does more damage now than it did. It's a telegraph that you do have to land on an enemy target. Assuming that it doesn't get deflected, it will heal the people who are in the telegraph around the enemy, as well as do damage to the enemy and enemies in those sitting in the telegraph. So you get a little AoE damage too. So that's pretty sweet. And with the buffs that they gave it to do a little bit more damage, a little more healing, it's a nice plus. It's almost worthwhile now to use it in DPS build, even though it scales off support power. But same as in drop 3, in drop 4 I will tier 4 this simply because the increase to assault and support power by 6%, and due to me having cooldown reduction in my amps, you can see very close to 100% uptime of this ability, especially now that it's instant cast when you're above 2 side points. Something to keep in mind. Anyway, that's basically that ability. Yeah, so next, oh, you know what? I didn't talk about Warden. Warden is something that in the past I used to not like using, simply because it uses so much focus. But due to the recent changes to it, it's actually worthwhile to take it now, in my opinion, over the other builds, because the other builds are essentially going to take Warden out and put something else in place of it. Okay. But what Warden does is it conjures this cool looking tree, if you will, that does a little burst heal, and then ticks a hot heal to 5 nearby party members every 1 second for 10 seconds. So 10 ticks. You do the math, that's a lot of healing. It's actually heals for more than Reverie does, except in the case that Reverie crits. So, pretty nice. Anyway, I took the tier 4 with this ability. Even though it only affects 5 party members, it's a good spell to put on the tank because of the added mitigation it gives. It's important to note that when it says Warden's Restoration grants a defense, which reduces physical and magic damage taken by 12%, they did change this because the tooltip was a little confusing. But essentially it increases the physical and magic mitigation that the tank will take, as well as 4 other party members who luckily get the heal. So, pretty cool. Pretty cool ability. With the new changes to this ability, what changed with it was that it used to tick every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. So the focus didn't change. It's still a lot of focus. So, keep that in mind if you get in situations where you feel like your focus region or your focus is getting really low. I would avoid using it and just, save your focus. Because there are some fights and raids where, even with the new Protostar dungeon, you do get low healing, focus-wise. Lower than I used to. Anyway, that basically covers all the healing spells. Real quick, I'll talk about Fixation. This is a god ability. OP as hell. Awesome ability. Nothing has changed with it from drop 3 to drop 4. So that's super awesome. It's still OP as hell. Yay. But basically what it does is it reduces all cooldowns by 60%, the tier 4 does, and generates 3 psi points. So a little later when I talk about tips and tricks of the trade as a healing Esper that I have learned over the past almost year of healing, is let me make sure I'm not AOK so I don't get kicked. It's pretty awesome though. Basically the tier 4 is a free 120 focus over 12 seconds given back to you. So it's worthwhile to take the tier 4. I didn't take the tier 8. There was a couple times in drop 3 where I did. But that was, again, because there weren't a lot of good tier 4s back then. Now there is. So there's reason to conserve your ability tier points and put them in places that will give you the most benefit. These last 2 you can feel free to change. I would highly discourage you from taking interrupts off your bar completely. Simply because, if you can bring something else to the raid other than just healing, you get the moo and more damage and burn stuff down quicker, why not? There's no really reason, unless there's a situation where nothing needs to be interrupted, where I wouldn't see you having either incapacitated or crush on your bar. Anyway, this last one's a filler spell. Again, it's a movement ability. You can move it around. I've moved it several times to fade out a CC break if I need that. Or, let's see, in the rare case, restrain, I suppose. Yeah, that's about it. Meditate's not worth taking, and like I said, we being one of the advantage of being a healing Esper, if you don't know this already, is that of the 3 healing classes, the Medic, Spellslinger, and Esper, we are a cheap, inexpensive, focus healing class with the same ability to put out enough healing to match the other classes. So, of the 3 healing classes, my opinion's biased, obviously, because I've healed the most with the Esper. But I think the Esper's the best healer overall. When it comes to AoE healing, burst healing especially, there is no healer, in my opinion, that can match that. And, I have logs and logs and logs of this information to prove that as well. As long as you know what you're doing, you should never really, in situations and in boss fights where burst healing is involved, you should never be low on the healing charts. But anyway, some tricks of the trade. So managing your cooldowns is absolutely vital to being a successful Esper. Okay? Sort of the first sort of tricks of the trade, if you will, that I want to share with you, and I was hesitant about this, but I feel the need to get that information out there to help others, is sort of a burst healing setup. So let's say, for example, you're on Phage Maul, and you have those big S-bombs that are going off, and everybody's shitting their pants because they're thinking they're going to die soon. And all of a sudden you just pop out this combo and they're full health, and they're like, yeah, okay, keep doing what we're doing. Essentially the combo I'm talking about, and I run most often, is you start with 0 psi points, right? So I take bolster, I pop my 2 charges of that, I get 2 psi points. I immediately pop Fixation, one of our cooldowns, which gives me 3 more psi points, get to 5, and I pop a Reverie. Okay. I then pop my Innate, I Soothe, charge, and get up to 5 psi points as quickly as possible. And I get another Reverie off. So essentially I've healed, for most health pools, half their health. And that's not even if it crits. If it crits, you're talking, I've seen anywhere from 12 to 13,000 one heal crits with Reverie, with my current support power. And so you multiply that by 2, that's most definitely like 75 to 85%, if not more, of the health pool of most classes. So you can see where that combo would really work out good with Phage Maul in the event that you had 2 bombs go off back to back. You know, they're down, I don't know, 25, 35% health. And with our AMs, which I'll talk about in a minute, they even get healed even more. So, pretty fucking sweet, if you ask me. That's a combo that I use a lot of. But some other added tips I would give you is, since Soothe is like a charging ability, you can charge it and hold it, right? And in the event that you know damage might hit or might not, no problem. It's a cheap heal. It is our cheapest heal, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Bolster's cheaper, but it doesn't heal for that amount either. But you charge it, you hold it, and when damage comes out, bam, there's the heal right away. It's very important that, you know, you talk with your, you know, if you're in a raid or even in a 5-man group, that you talk with your people and coordinate and be like, hey guys, it's a line telegraph, it's very narrow, it's hard to aim it if you're all over the frickin' place, so stack. If you communicate that with them efficiently enough, you should have no problem burst healing many targets. And in the event that you can't, you can still spam Soothe, even without getting the side point charge. That's another tip, is and still heal for, you know, charge 1 is 2,889 health. Excuse me, 2,089 health instant, right? So, and there's no global cooldown to this either, so you can constantly spam this. And just to give you an idea, Mind Over Body heals for more, but it costs you 1.5 seconds to cast it, whereas Soothe, it's around 800 health less, but it's instant with no global cooldown. Just, you know, food for thought. Another tip is to use your damn gadget. I am probably the worst at this. I typically forget to. I forget about it. My gadget that I use is Battlemender's, I'm going to say this wrong, Flanax. I don't know. I can't talk. Pronounce that. But, yeah, it increases my support power for 10 seconds and causes your next heal to have a 100% chance to critically hit. Now, this is very important, okay? Because by not using this, I'm not getting a crit heal. You know, yeah, there's, you know, due to my base crit, there's a possibility that I do get a crit heal. But the most efficient time to use this particular gadget, or any gadget similar to this, is when you're about to use your biggest heal, essentially, which is Reverie. Okay? To get that guaranteed crit, you know, when you need it. So that's another tips of the trade, so to speak, and that's essentially all I'm going to share with you at this point. But, you know, that's just the knowledge I've learned. You know, it's always good. Every good healer, regardless of the class, needs to know the boss mechanics of the fight. Enough to understand when damage is coming, when to prep spells, like Soothe, for example. You know, and it just overall makes you a better healer if you understand the mechanics of the fight prior to going into the fight. So, And that's just a general FYI for anyone who's healing. Um, it's just important to know those things. All right, so I went a long way to talk about some things that I felt was important. I hope it's important to you guys, um, to kind of help you out. That's new healers or um, even some experienced ones. You may not have realized some of those tricks of the trade, so to speak. All right, we're going to talk about amps next. So I'm not going to, go too much into the amp setup. I'm going to explain a lot of the tier 2s. That's these here that I picked. Because a lot of the tier 1s are just static, self-explanatory amps. Like, who doesn't want more support power? As a healer, I hope you would have the knowledge at this point that support power is important. So, as well as focus region and whatnot. Okay. Tier 2s. I'm going to talk about these amps and then essentially not talk about it again. Okay. So hopefully this doesn't take too long. Okay, first and foremost, support tree. I took all the tier 1s. That's focus, cost reduction, it's focus region, and support power. Now the tier 2s, the reasons I did not take build up and focus mastery. Two main reasons why I did not take these 2 amps. First and foremost, build up is still somewhat laggy. Basically what it does is when you use a builder, it adds a stack of build up. And when you reach 3 stacks, that next stack on your builder spell will restore an additional amount of health. Now they buff the amount that it restores, but in my opinion, it's still not worthwhile taking. And my reasoning in that is that, yeah, okay, it does increase the amount that you will heal overall, but due to the nature of the servers, this still has a lot of issues. Like certain builders won't give you a stack of buildup. I can tell you that 100% knowledge. That, even if you took Mind Over Body and you spammed it over and over again, not every time that you get healed will you receive a stack of buildup. So, in my opinion, it's buggy. It's not consistent. I don't want it. That's my main reasoning for not taking that. And even if I did, it'd be one of those situations where I don't honestly think 856 health is going to mean the difference between death and life. If a person is at 856 health, they're most likely going to die anyway. So, that's not going to make or break you taking that amp. Now, Focus Mastery, this was nerfed into the ground. At launch, it was a great amp. It was a fantastic amp. I don't recall the exact numbers to it, but due to the nature and the type of healing that healing espers are, earlier I talked about them being cheap and inexpensive focus out of all the healing classes. I don't really see an honest reason why you would want to take this amp. So I left it out. There are better uses for my amps, in my opinion. Now the ones I did take in the tier 2 support tree, Inspiration. Landing a basic heal grants healed allies a defense. So any basic heal will grant this for 5 seconds. It reduces the damage they take by 8.5 seconds. Sweet. Cool. Awesome. In my opinion, it's worth taking. Is it the best, oh my god, freaking awesome barbecue chicken amp you've ever seen? No, it's not. But it's a decent amp, nonetheless. Spectral Shield. When you critically heal an ally, they gain an absorption shield for a certain amount. So again, this speaks for itself. Every time you critically hit, they get absorption shield. So in my opinion, it's worth taking because it's added mitigation, less healing that you have to do. Not that you need to do a ton of healing anyway with the Esper, honestly. Our skill set and toolkit is really, really good, in my opinion. And I've already talked about that, so I'll shut up about that. Hard to hit. Your heals have a 15% chance to grant a defense. The defense is it increased deflect chance by 8% for 10 seconds. So some of you might be looking at this and saying, well, 15% is not a lot, Luke, so why would you take this as opposed to other amps? Well, my reasoning is this. Due to the changes to tanks specifically when it deals to mitigation, specifically stalkers, they had a lot of issues with taking more damage now. And I can tell you this because I've healed quite a few from drop 3 to drop 4, and they are getting hit a lot harder. Not only that, but they have other issues. But that's beside the point. In the event that this amp does proc, essentially you're giving them a better chance to not take as much damage. So why not take it? Even if it's 15%. Even if it's 10%. I don't know. Maybe 10% might be a stretch. But a 15% chance to proc that defense is, in my opinion, worthwhile taking. It might be the difference between a target getting one shot and a target not getting one shot. So that's to put it in perspective for people. 1 second. Cool. I was just checking the stream, making sure it was doing okay. Alright, so we covered all the tier 2 support stuff. Tier 3. Now I took Mirage because this is one of those things where you have to take the amp to make it available to use in your limited action set. So I took it. Again, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I don't think it's as good. It still needs some work, honestly, to make it better than the changes they've already made to a lot of our spells. So anyway, that's there. Now Healing Touch. This is a surprise for me. I actually used to run it a lot, and recently went away from this amp due to the fact that what it used to be was whenever you use a support finisher on an ally below 30% health, you heal an additional X amount of health. And it used to only occur every 8 seconds. So as you can see, they buffed the amount health threshold that the target needs to be at in order to receive the additional health. So that's cool. That's awesome. Not only that, but it also increased the frequency at which it can occur. Okay? Because it used to be 8 seconds. So you will see a lot more usage out of this amp than you did in drop 3. And that's pretty cool because, like I said, I was going away from it due to the fact that it was a very rare occasion where targets would be under 30% health and see some usage out of this amp. So anyway, that covers everything in the support tree. We'll talk about the hybrid assault support tree. I took all the tier 1s except one crit hit severity. I would like to get that one, but due to me taking Healing Touch, I just didn't have enough hand points. And I think Healing Touch is much more worthwhile than 4% critic. So anyway, the tier 2s. What's changed and what's new? What hasn't changed? What hasn't changed is Tactician is still the same as it was before. Standing still for 2.5 seconds grants an Empower and a Bastion. We're more concerned about the Bastion. The magic damage dealt Yeah, it's cool. It's a plus. It's nothing to get too excited about, though. Um, uh, and it is an increase to healing, um, assuming you can stand still, which in WildStar is not always easy to do, especially in raids and dungeons, for that matter. Um, I am constantly going AFK because I can't move too much. Um, let's see. So what has changed is not snack worthy. Okay, now this ability is basically when by activating our innate spectral form, which basically you gain a I think it's a buff to assault and support power. Excuse me. Spectral form, basically what it is, and I should have talked about this sooner when I was talking about abilities. I apologize for that. It grants an absorb. It gives you 1 interrupt armor, and it generates 1 psi point every second for 5 seconds. So basically, if you did nothing at all but stare at the screen and pop this, innate, you'd have 5 psi points free of charge in 5 seconds. So pretty cool. But by taking this ability, basically every time you activate your innate, your assault power and your support power goes up by 10% for 5 seconds, which may not seem like a lot, but it is a lot. Assuming how much support power you do have, well, 10% of what I do now have is 272 more support power by activating my innate. Now, it only lasts for 5 seconds, so it's, debatable of whether or not this is worthwhile. In my opinion, it's worthwhile because it's always available. Your innate has a roughly low cooldown anyway, so yeah, it's 30 seconds, so it's pretty low. So alternating your cooldowns and managing your cooldowns, which is something I talked about earlier, is very important. Even more now, due to the fact that this amp affects your innate, essentially. So, anyway, that explains those. Now, the last tree we'll talk about is utility. And, of course, I got the cooldown reduction. Not because we have a ton of cooldowns, but to maintain 100% or guaranteed 100% uptime, God, I can't talk, of Pyrokinetic Flame and Warden, taking cooldown reduction just makes sense. So you can keep the uptime more on those spells that I mentioned. Not only that, but you can reduce your cooldowns of your interrupts, or interrupt in my case, which are really long anyway, so that's always helpful to have that 15% cooldown. Next thing I'm going to talk about is we'll talk about mental overflow. When you would gain a side point while at full side points, a side point orb spawns near your location and lasts for 5 seconds. It can stack up to 3 times. So, I know a lot of people didn't like this ability for a long time. As a DPS Esper, I loved it because I sucked at the rotation, I'll be honest. So I didn't want to waste side points. Being a healing Esper, however, you'd never really have too many problems wasting side points, I tell you that much, because in general, using Soothe, the way I have described to use it, except when you're just instantly spamming it, will always generate side points for you. So having that extra buffer to, if I do get up to my max, which is 5 side points, to be able to run back over it after I've used a finisher and pick up more side points to get me back up to another 5 side points to get more burst heals out is worthwhile. So in my opinion, it's very much worthwhile taking mental overflow. don't recall if they have fixed the bug to where if you're in a raid and some other Esper accidentally is beside you for some reason, they could steal your orb. I can't recall if I remember seeing in the patch notes that they fixed that. But that used to be a problem with the mental overflow and reasons people didn't take it. Alright, next one I took is defensive maneuvers. And this kind of synergizes good with tactician as well, because you want to find situations where you can stand still, but at the same time not take hits from boss mechanics. So having defensive maneuvers, anytime you dash, you gain a defense, which, you know, increases your damage mitigation by 6% for 5 seconds. To me, this is a no-brainer. You know, damage mitigation you have, even as a clothy tissue paper farmer. God, sucks. But, you know, it's worthwhile, in my opinion. It is. And the reason we really take it is honestly to get fixation and unlock it, so we can put it on our limited action sets. So, yeah. Like I said, I do wish I could fill out crit hit severity, but since it's last in our stat priority anyway, I'm not sweating about it too much, you know. So, anyway, this is in general what I would suggest using. I suppose if I had too much focus region, I could always pull points out of that and put it elsewhere. For example, dash region is not a bad idea, considering that would synergize good with defensive maneuvers, as well as max shield capacity. Couldn't be too bad, in my opinion. Also, an interesting amp that I, forgot to mention was Bingo. A lot of people were debating with me, and well, not a lot, because there's not a lot of healing Espers in our guild, but a couple of people, me and this particular DPS Esper, talk a lot about this kind of thing that I'm talking about now, which is theory crafting builds. We kind of beat around the bush with this amp, and I don't know, it's not as bad as it used to be, obviously. Because the chance upon a crit hit to, with a builder, to get another side point is, it used to be like really low. Now it's back up to where, in my opinion, it should be. But again, due to the nature of healing Espers being that, in general, you usually have no problems with side point generations. I don't honestly think this is worthwhile taking. I will have to do more testing to, verify that, but I just don't see a point to take it. So, anyway, that covers basically what I was wanting to talk about with the amps, and I talked longer than I needed to on that anyway. But, alright, so, again, this is the build that I would normally use in just about every situation. I think it's a good, solid, all-around heal. I have sustained healing from Warden and Pyro, assuming it doesn't get deflected, because that does happen sometimes. And I also have more sustained healing from Bolster. I have burst healing in Reverie, and the ability to get back more burst healing in short amount of time due to those kind of tips I was giving you guys earlier. So yeah, I'm really happy with this build. So the only difference that you will see, with my other two builds are that I simply removed Warden and replaced another ability in its place. So I've already talked about Mirage and my plus and minuses somewhat. I want to re-emphasize how difficult it is for tanks, not only healers, to make sure that this is seeing usefulness. If you're going to take it, tier 4 it. I wouldn't suggest tier 8ing it for the same reason I didn't suggest tier 8ing Reverie, simply because we have so many good tier 4s. And it's so hard to, fit everything in our action set to make maximum usefulness of all of our abilities that it's not worthwhile wasting. The tier 8 basically puts a hot on the target who receives the heal from Mirage. So it's usually overhealing anyway. So not really worthwhile. I was really, like I said, excited about this setup. But I'm thinking of the 3 that I will show you, this is probably the worst setup, due to the fact that you lose the sustained healing that you would get from Warden. But yeah, that's basically another build that I will use occasionally. Is Phantasmal Armor in place of Warden and Mirage. And this is essentially like another oh shit button cooldown that I'll be able to throw on a single target to provide an absorb shield. Pretty significant one if you look at the tooltip. 14, almost 15k shield is nothing to, say that it's minimal, because it's very important and has saved many a person's life over the months and time I've used it. So, one thing I will add to Phantasmal Armor is the tier 4. I sort of wanted to make sure that I remembered it correctly. It grants an additional interrupt armor and a defense to the target that you apply it to, which reduces the magic damage taken by 15%. So this is why I talk about a lot, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent. This is why I talk about a lot that it's important for any healer that has the ability to shield these certain types of damage types to understand boss mechanics and fights ahead of time and what type of damage they actually do. Because you can be of most usefulness if you understand that, so anyway, I also have a hybrid build. I didn't save it yet, but I do want to share it with you. It's quite interesting, and I have used it a couple times. But essentially what you do is, let's see. Okay, so this is like a hybrid build I was kind of playing with. If you guys watched my last video, I think I talked about it. I don't recall exactly if I did or not, to tell you the truth. The only thing I need to change, one thing, sorry. Now, so what this basically does is, and I'll tell you exactly when, in cases that I've used this, is in GA. Like, Kurlak is not really our best fight as far as healing is concerned, and it may put a little bit of a strain on your other healers, and I would highly advise talking to them. I didn't, sorry guys, before I tried it, but so that they know, that you're not going to be doing as much healing as you would in a full heal spec. But the damage you do from this ability or setup is pretty damn good. And a lot of this has to do, it used to be that the best DPS I'd ever seen, really honestly, was, and that's even with the Kurlak buff they give you, was somewhere around 800 or so DPS, which may not seem like much, but over the course of a 5-6 minute fight, that's a lot of DPS for a healer. You know, as provided he doesn't lose too much of his actual healing by doing this. But a tier 7 illusionary blades and a tier 7 pyrokinetic flame. Now what illusionary blades does is it allows you to charge it. If you can stay still, you gain that amp buff by tactician. And it does it has a significant high amount of damage scaling. Even though I have low assault power, it does a lot of damage. And it's a lot of burst damage, provided you can stand still and cast it. But even in the situation where you wouldn't be able to stand still and cast it, just using an instant cast, similar to Soothe, does a decent amount of damage and doesn't put you in harm's way at all. And it generates a sight point, even at charge 1. You know, so it's pretty nice. Excuse me, I might be wrong on that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, it does generate a sight point. I was reading the tooltip wrong. So, but anyway, so you don't lose that much sight point generation by having this ability. It still scales good enough to make decent amount of damage, and that paired with the tier 7 pyrokinetic flame, which has recently received a buff to the damage and healing it does. Not a huge one, but enough. I could probably see myself doing 1,000, if not more, DPS per second in a duration of a 5-6 minute fight. May be the difference between you downing Kurlag and not downing it. So I had been experimenting with it a lot once we had her on farm status, so to speak. So it was pretty cool that it worked out that way. I also did it on what is that dude? The big bird on floor 1. I forget his freaking name. But you essentially stand still during that fight too, so you receive the buff from your tactician amp anyway. It's not much, 4% damage, but yeah, it ups the damage a little bit. That also is a situation where I use this particular hybrid ISK build, so to speak. So just a little extra to give you, but I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about in this video, and good God, it was a long one. But I hope you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to be, I certainly did. If you want to be alerted to when these type videos, and you like this type videos, when they go live, this will be later uploaded to YouTube once I get it all set up. But you know, if you're a YouTube user and you're watching this and you like what you saw and you want to be alerted of more videos like this, you know, follow me or subscribe, whatever it is. Sorry, I'm a little tired. So that you can be alerted of new videos that I will bring out. Also, if you're a Twitch user, I appreciate you guys hanging tough and watching the stream if you're still on. And you like what you see, same thing I told the YouTube users. You know, just follow me so you'll be alerted when I come out with new videos. Like I said, I don't do this often enough, honestly. And I do enjoy talking about these things, even if it seems somewhat boring to some other people. I enjoy it. But a lot of the reasons I don't, for some of the people who are new, make a lot of these videos is because I can't really do a whole lot. My upload speeds are quite terrible. So, yeah, I just hadn't really been able to make them either. I actually had an issue with my computer a while back. Some of the guildies knew about it, and I appreciate them helping me out with getting it back up and running. So thank you guys. Big shout out to Interstellar Command. Guild leader is King Remlareth. Cool guy. He can be an asshole, but cool guy. And I appreciated all he is doing for our guild. Also the officers, Code Nike, Pith, Abu, especially Double as well. Thank you guys for doing what you do. Could not be where we're at today without all y'all's contributions. So I thank you. Anyway, I'm running out of things to say, and I'm rambling a whole hell of a lot. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Peace out.